The next topic is who owns the pixels? An important aspect of everything in today's world, really, something that I think has not been discussed enough with regards to digital fashion, is ownership. Brooke Roberts Islam wrote a really interesting article about it in Forbes a couple of months ago. When a brand or designer gets a digital version of their design made, that replica technically doesn't belong to them unless they have a contract in place. It belongs to the digital designer. What are your thoughts around this, Carrie? I know that you spoke about this in the article. Would you give our audience your view on digital fashion ownership?
Cool, thanks for that. Yeah, it's a very interesting topic. Of course, you have to get into the nitty-gritty details of every single contract, starting with the software that you're using, or even the hardware that you're using, because basically everything that you created in the software itself potentially belongs to the software manufacturer if you take it very literally from a business jargon place. When we work with clients, with brands initially, the raw data that we generate, the 3D assets that we generate, according to our contract, to us, we are the true owners of
Okay.
that. Yeah. So, but it really depends on the contractual details that you end up doing. And I've been hearing and seeing a lot of conversation going around this in the fashion industry where people get almost scared of using the software because it states that the ownership of the
Yeah.
designs belongs to the software. And I think it's a little bit too much paranoia happening, because this has been going around since the beginning of basically software. All of Adobe softwares have the same type of license agreements attached to them as do Clo 3D or Browseware. So I don't think we should be focusing so much on those things. I think we should be focusing on the asset. Where we distribute it to will basically determine what happens to it. Let's say if you put something on Instagram, you're putting the render of the image, the picture of the image on Instagram. On Instagram terms and conditions, that basically belongs to them at that point. However, you still remain an owner of that image, and the raw data that you've generated is also yours. It's really about how you decide to use it. What kind of contracts do you want to put in place? And there's nothing worse than somebody who starts being nitpicky about every single detail about contracts. This can truly break relationships with partners, relationships with clients. It's just about being honest and transparent and talking to each other like two people, having an honest conversation. This is what the contract states, and just creating transparency. I think the days are over of small text in contracts. At least I have not come across that. However, I'm in contractual negotiations almost every. It's just a part of it, because everybody, of course, tries
Yeah.
to create a very transparent way of seeing and understanding. A contract is basically an understanding between two different parties on paper to say, I own this, you own this. This is what you can do with these assets. This is what I can do with those assets. But it's still a piece of paper, because if I just call up my client, who I have a very trustworthy relationship with, and I ask to be like, hey, can I do this thing that is says in the contract that I can't do? And if my client gives me consent at that moment, then it's completely fine. And that's the way I go about it. It's nothing more, nothing less than just a trusted relationship between two different partners.
Yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Carrie. Yeah, that just simplifies everything really, and it makes so much sense. Um, but in a sense, digital fashion, as you kind of said, it makes it easier to make counterfeit items as well. So who's responsible for monitoring that? And how do we ensure that that doesn't happen? I mean, from what I understand, in gaming, there's a whole full-blown digital black market. And that could easily happen to digital fashion as well. How could we prevent that? Or rather, should we prevent that? Juliane, do you have any thoughts on this? What are your opinions on this?
Yes, I do, because to be honest, I am not an expert on gaming, and I had to consult my teenage son earlier today to give me an insight. So, but as far as I understand it, the main issue of gaming and counterfeits is the issue of the black market. It's about liability in the trading process. real money of trading for digital goods, and I think we see lots of similarities there. However, there are some insights from the gaming industry that could be really used for the digital fashion industry, because it's kind of a natural evolution of an exponential transformation, the same that the video game industry experienced as well. And I think anything that is preventing the use of hacking, using illegal methods with the proof of authenticity, I think is fantastic, and we know blockchain is great for that. And Karina is going to probably tell you more about that with her project. But what's been seen is that that price cutting can be very effective to reduce consumer piracy in gaming. And on the other hand, I think the gaming industry saw it as a positive effect to offer something as a free version, or like a counterfeit copy, and then the consumer in the end bought it as a product because he or she decided to buy it as a legal copy. So it's more like an incentive. And as we know from different areas, from design or from programming, sometimes it can be a complement to be copied. And like if you look at open source concepts from programming as well, I mean, copying and hacking can be a really interesting aspect to prototype something and to really see if it's good or not, or if it's useful or not. And I think in that sense, it has a huge potential to really learn from the experience of the gaming industry. For example, if you look at price systems or revenue systems, how you can give incentives for engagement and offer more products and things like that. And the gaming industry saw that reduced the amount of counterfeits being done. So I think it can, don't fight it. I think you should embrace it more. And especially as everything is being speaking on digital fashion, I think the fashion industry can learn, the digital fashion industry can learn a great deal from the gaming industry.
Can I just add to that? Sorry,
Oh,
Ashwini.
absolutely. Oh, sure,
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, I really like those thoughts, and I would just love to make the other example from the music industry. You know, when Napster came out and everybody started downloading music for free, it disrupted the music industry. But through these disruptions, we've seen a lot of positive things happening, such as Spotify. I pirated music for about 15 years, I would say. But when Spotify came along, I music, because finally there was an experience that I felt like it was good enough that I wanted to pay for, you know, that 10 euros a month that I pay for Spotify. I think it's totally worth it than having to go through the pain of, you know, finding those cracks for the music. And I think, you know, pirating in the music industry, in the film industry is of course massive as well. And then we start seeing services like Netflix and HBO popping up, that to me still are not fully there yet, but getting close. But you see that it's like consumers are super happy to engage with those services. And that's my question as well. What's going to be that for fashion industry? And I think digital fashion will definitely have an angle of, you know, creating this service where people will feel like they don't need to, you know, do counterfeits, that they don't need to be cracking stuff. But of course, we're going to see those black markets. And to Juliane's point, I think it's going to be actually super interesting to see what kind of stuff that's going to come out of there, because I think that's going to be, again, maybe that co-designing, you know, like somebody, you know, just finds, you know, like for instance, what if somebody would have hacked the Balenciaga video game experience, for instance? They would have become a co-creator in that experience. And I think those are kind of experiences that are really going to start kind of defining what the digital fashion world, how it will look like in the future. And I'm super excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting when you put it like that, because I mean, I used to download music, movies, everything illegally, and suddenly one fine day we started paying for it with Spotify and Netflix, and it's the same with me. So to think of how fashion will take up that model is really interesting to think about. And what you said, Juliane, just about and borrowing from gaming's experience, that's super interesting as well. I think fashion does have a lot to learn from gaming's experience of this. So thank you both so much. That actually leads me perfectly on to the next question. Karina, you've the beta version of your new venture, Dematerialized, which tracks digital fashion ownership using blockchain technology. Can you tell us a bit more about what the role of blockchain is in this and how it can help secure the ownership of a digital garment?
Definitely. I'll try my very best, because I'm also coming at this that I'm the kind of fashion person and my co-founder Marjorie is the blockchain expert. But I hope that helps maybe also make it a little bit more digestible as well. That the way forward that we see it is that if you release the digital fashion asset as a non-fungible token, as an NFT, and I think one of the parallel industries that, again, we're really kind of watching and looking at the behaviors of is the crypto art space. And if you follow some of the headlines that have came from that in the last like 2 months alone, or even just it's mental, the adoption, the creation, and the kind of like uptake. And one of the main reasons that if we look at that sector, that it's kind of grown so exponentially is because the creators realize that this is a way that, with the asset itself being termed as an NFT and being transparent in terms of who it was that authored it, and then if it is for sale, people who own it as it gets traded, that every time, for instance, that item gets sold, the original creator will get a percentage of that sale. And there's very few kind of like other sectors that have managed to have that lean a kind of distribution chain. So I think that's one of the things that makes it really interesting. I also think for early career kind of, when you release something as an NFT on a blockchain, you're also kind of protecting your intellectual property, because it's time and date stamped at that precise moment in time, this kind of creation that you're putting out there. And I know that some creators at the moment have to kind of use some very old school methods if you don't have time to like patent or things like sending a letter to yourself, or like old school things like that. So I think really offers like so many different opportunities. And I think something with my kind of PR or kind of marketing hat on is that I would love to be able to have a magic link in profile of a garment where I can watch a video and actually see the face or faces of the people who've created it, and understand, like, one of the things we were thinking of is what kind of music was the creator listening to when they were doing this, what kind of inspiration. And I think like the provenance and the storytelling aspect, there are a few brands who have kind of experimented with this previously, but they've done it like purely on kind of like data and numbers. And I think massive value here, and well, hopefully like being able to have an augmented reality version of the creator of that person like right in front of you. I think there's like so many opportunities for that kind of stuff that makes me not be able to sleep at excited.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks, Karina. I mean, blockchain is a topic I'm super interested in, so I'm excited to see what that'll mean for digital fashion. And I mean, I must say I'm super excited to experience Dematerialized as well. So that is the end of this scene. And now over to Mathilde and Scarlett. Thanks again to all of the speakers of this scene.
Thank you, Ashwini.